Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing great today. My name is Josh Dubois of JD Strategic. We got the new background going, so hopefully that can help. So if you're new to everything, feel free, subscribe, like, comment, help out the algorithm a little bit. This is episode number 4 of the Conquer the Mind podcast, because if you know me, you know that I believe in the three letters CTM for Conquer the Mind, because really, if you can conquer your mind and your mindset, can really conquer anything in this world. And I think really everything starts with having that proper mindset. And then we kind of dived into on episode 1 with Dennis Schooley, how it's really followed by taking that massive action. So without further ado, we have a franchise development manager today, Hayden Shaw, who lives in Riverdale, Utah with his wife, Lexi, and his dog, Milo, who we were just briefly talking about. They have been married for 4 years and they're expecting their first child in March. He has been with Authority Brands, which is part of the Mosquito Squad franchise company, which if you have any questions, we're going to dive into all of that later. He's been with them for a little over 3 years now, and he's been with Mosquito Squad for about 18 months. So Mosquito Squad is an outdoor pest control company that focuses on eliminating the deadliest animals on the planet with mosquitoes. So not necessarily something that someone may necessarily think about right away with franchising, but we're going to learn is a very profitable business. So very excited. I think the viewers will have a lot of questions. So Hayden, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. I appreciate you making the time for me.
And so I think I kind of like to start off all the podcasts as we were kind of just briefly talking about really just as a young entrepreneur. I think a lot of young people just lost out there, not really sure exactly the direction they want to go in life. So, I feel like a lot of times this part is really rushed with, where you are today and all the kind of success stories there. But I think it's really kind of a troublesome journey for a lot of people, even just starting off maybe with high school. What was kind of the outlook in high school? What were the people around you doing? Were you surrounded in a good environment? What was kind of the path for you in high school? Was it always kind of franchising? Or we'll kind of dive into that later, but what was it kind of like in high school?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't always franchising, right? I think if you're not born into it, you don't really think of it as an option or even a possibility because you don't realize it's there. But in high school, for me, I really didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do. So I had a very solid friend group. I had a good upbringing, so I was very blessed and fortunate with things similar to that. But I really had no direction as far as where my real strengths were or what I wanted to do moving forward. And around that time, at least in the state of Utah, a lot of young men will go and serve a church mission for 2 years. So a majority of my friends did that. I was one of the very few who did not. And so a lot of my friends left shortly after high school. I was kind of, left on my own to figure things out, go to college, see what I want to do, make new friends because everyone had left for at least 2 years. And so that's kind of where I ended up coming out of high school, um, and what my situation looked like there. But definitely wasn't looking forward to franchising or even realize it
Yeah.
was a thing.
Was it like a very religious community growing up? What is it that kind of like spread everyone in the community that direction?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar, Utah has a very dominant religion in the state, and so it's not so much a religious community as it is just very very prominent in the state. A lot of people, whether you're affiliated with it or not, you know what the prominent religion is and
Yeah.
the basic morals and beliefs behind it. So I think Utah kind of has a reputation for being recognized as that religious state, and that would be why. So it was definitely very prominent where I grew up. A lot of my friends were affiliated. I specifically wasn't, which they were still very great to me, obviously. And but when they left, it was kind of like, okay, what do I do now? All my friends just left, graduated high school. I've got, the beginning of the rest of my life ahead of me.
Mhm.
Where do I go from here?
Mhm. So at that point, you kind of graduate high school, you're kind of like going separate ways with your friends from high school. And what's kind of the path there? Do you go to college from there? Do you start working from there? Do you still stay in touch with those guys today? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, yeah. So in typical 18-year-old fashion, I procrastinated, applying for colleges, deciding where I was going to go, what
Yeah.
universities were more proficient in certain things and had better programs for whatever it may be. And so I ended up, enrolling for college a couple weeks before classes started at my local university called Weber State University in Ogden, Utah. And so from there, I worked a warehouse job for
Okay.
my uncle who did holiday lighting and irrigation. And so worked kind of my first year in college and met a few different friends. One who I think we may touch on a little bit later, just as far as franchising goes. But lived at home with my parents. Really felt like I was kind of stuck, I guess, because I was living in the same place, kind of seeing the same people because I lived in the same town. And so from there, I actually transferred schools after a year to a university in southern Utah. So kind of
Okay.
put myself in a different situation, tried to grow a little bit, and I ended up being recruited by the ambassador program at that university. Which, if you're not familiar, the ambassador program is in charge of building relationships with prospective students, recruiting new students to the school, getting them excited not just about college but that university and specifically. And so from then on, I realized that I was pretty good at connecting with people, building relationships, and getting them excited about an opportunity that I believed in. And so
Yeah.
from there, I continued to study marketing and communications as kind of the degree I fell into,
Mm.
and I was down there for a couple of years, really enjoyed what I was doing, and then finished up school back at Weber State a few years later.
Okay, you dropped a lot of interesting things there, and just kind of diving back into, so you're kind of in community college doing the warehouse job. First off, can you walk us through what did the warehouse job look like, and you're balancing this on top of community college, and how on top of balancing all that were you like, I want to go to another school and kind of change things up? So how are you able to kind of balance all those things at once, and how did you kind of know you wanted to try something else on top of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, to be completely honest, balancing, going to school and working that warehouse job wasn't something that was too difficult for me because I wasn't living away from home yet, right? I didn't have that extra financial obligation of, okay, I need to pay rent, I need to get groceries, and a
Right.
lot of it's still taken care of for me. And so I was super blessed to have that. But at the same time, that's kind of what led me to be like, okay, this warehouse job's great. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
Pick, pack, ship, fulfill orders, very, very basic. And I actually had a really good friend that I worked with there. And I was like, yeah, man, I just don't know what I'm doing here. I think I might want to transfer and go to school in southern Utah. And I'll never
Huh.
forget this. He said, if you do that, you'll fail. He said, I know you. I don't
Yeah.
think you're stupid, but if you go move away, I know you're going to not focus on the right things. You're going to be focused on having a good time. I think your grades are going to fall by the wayside and you're not going to last. And so
Jeez.
having that conversation, it really sparked that fire in me of, you know what, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna be successful down
Yeah.
there. And so this person's still my best friend today, the one who told me that. But I really went down there. That was the extra nudge I needed to say, okay, you know what, I'm tired of being in this same town, gonna go do something for myself, and I'm not gonna fail. I'm gonna go being successful and
Yeah.
wherever I end up. Because I really didn't have a plan when I moved down.
That's super powerful there. And I always kind of say like your biggest fan is really going to be like someone on the other side of the world, someone that you've literally never met. It's usually, people that are around you when you start to do things that are kind of outside the norm. For me, coming from a very small town up north in Boston, Massachusetts, and going to a much bigger school at University of Florida, everyone kind of has those same things where they're not doing the same thing, so they kind of want to try to put you down to a certain extent. But it's a great example where just kind of going back to the idea of you have the mindset, you wanted to do it, you decided to take action, and really not allowing kind of your community, your circumstances to really determine your output, but really you determining your output. So I think that's a super powerful message. And I love how you said that specifically, people said you were going to fail. How far away was school from where you were from? How big of a difference was that? And did you know anyone else at this new school? And then I know you mentioned diving into marketing communications. Was how did you find out that you wanted to major in that? Were you doing that at community college as well?
Yeah, so it was kind of a roundabout way. And so I'll address your first point first. Moving down there, it's probably about a 5-hour drive, assuming you're
Okay.
pretty clear on traffic. So
Yeah.
close enough that I could still make it home if there was an emergency, right? But my mom's not calling me every Sunday to come home for dinner, right? And so
Yeah.
I moved down there with one other friend who I was decently close with, but we were kind of the two friends left over from all the ones who went and did that service mission for 2 years. And so we went down together. And I'd been studying just general education before that, didn't have a real idea of what I wanted to do. And I actually started the athletic training program at Dixie State University, which is a school in Southern Utah, because I'd always had an interest in it, the way the human body works. I was involved with sports growing up. And so it was always something that I could relate to and was interesting. And I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to intern with the athletic training team. And I realized that, the hours that they put in, the work they're actually doing,
Yeah.
seeing it firsthand, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I kind of had to pivot without any real direction. And so I said, you know what, I'll study communications. It's a broad degree, and see what marketing looks like, because obviously marketing's not going anywhere. It'll be useful moving forward. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the communications and marketing role, was just kind of pivoting from something I thought I may want to do and realizing I didn't.
So weird that the reday I just rudely interrupted you. I'm gonna remove that guy real quick.
No, you're good. Do I need to repeat anything? Could you still hear me, or just kind of cover my face?
No, you're good. I had the read AI in the first couple meetings to try it out. But basically when I posted the video, it just showed as like a third person, it was like a blank screen. So this video, I bet the quality will be a lot better. You'll be able to see our faces a lot better. So hopefully this will work a little bit better, but you kind of said a lot of interesting things there. And I know you mentioned the athletics. How serious did you play athletics in your career? Was it just something you played passionately in high school, or what did that look like? And then kind of drawing into seeing the heavy hours, how did that kind of affect you? And did that kind of tie back into the warehouse job where you're working kind of long hours there, seeing people around you working long hours? And did that kind of change your mindset?
Yeah, so I mean, I was never like the most athletically gifted person at my school, right? I definitely wasn't the all-star or anything like that. It was more something that I enjoyed being active. I loved playing football and basketball growing up, really just doing anything in a group setting that allowed me to go out and participate with my friends,
Yeah.
right? So whether it was just getting together at the park playing ultimate frisbee, or my friends kind of on a whim, all of us trying out for the tennis team our junior year of high school, having never played tennis before. It was just something I enjoyed doing, but I never really had the aspirations to, oh, I'm going to go play at the collegiate level, because I
Yeah.
was able to be transparent with myself and say, dude, you're not that good at football or really anything on that front, right?
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where that drive came to. Maybe I'm not the all-star athlete, but I still want to be involved in that atmosphere and take care of those athletes and learn more about how the bodies work, dealing with injuries, the road to recovery, things similar to that. And so
Mhm.
your question about the hours that it took, it was eye-opening to me, because the warehouse job was kind of a typical 9 to 5 when I wasn't in school. We shut
Yeah.
everything down at 5. Orders had to be out by a certain time. With athletic training, and Dixie State being a smaller university, when I started there, they had one head athletic trainer with a couple assistants. They were in charge of every single organized sport and taking care of
Yeah.
each athlete on the team. And so
Huh.
realizing that they were putting in far more than just 60 hours to maintain the basics of their job, not even going above and beyond.
Yeah.
And the athletes aren't clean when you're treating them after practice, right? It never smelled good in
Yeah.
the training room, things like that. It just wasn't as enticing of an environment as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You see the athletic trainers in the NFL, they've got all this high tech gear and equipment. And to really get to that level, you are the best of the best of the best. And
Mhm.
if you're not, then you're, very low level at a high school, dealing with, things 24/7 that you probably don't want to be, at least in my opinion. That's kind of what drew me away from it. Was you're at every game, every practice for every sports team affiliated with the school. It's
Yeah.
just overwhelming.
That's powerful right there, and kind of just relates to kind of just the idea of just trying new things, and kind of going back to my own personal life, very similar, where I was very passionate about basketball. I put in the hours, I put in the time, but I just wasn't good, just I put in the time, like I practiced a lot, like every single day consistently. But just the games would come around and I just wasn't getting the points. I was just on the bench. So it's just a matter of, you try things and then you start to pivot, you figure out other things that you're good at. And, that's interesting that you started off with sports, then you kind of tried like a career in sports, and then that kind of led to you to that next opportunity where now you understand, you like marketing, you like communication. So I think that's really interesting. Just a good lesson to anyone out there with just the idea of the mindset and just trying new things with, a lot of people being lost out there. I'd encourage anyone, just if you try new things, it just leads to really the next opportunity. I would say when someone says no to you, it really just says next opportunity. So not using things as, a no. When someone says it can't happen, that's why I'm so intrigued. When someone said you were specifically gonna fail, was it your sports background that kind of led you to say, no, that's not me, I'm meant for something else? Or was there like a moment where you kind of, how did you kind of know that, you were kind of different than everyone else around you and you wanted to kind of try other things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever really put it into perspective. I wouldn't say it was specifically the sports background that I had. I think there's probably a lot of influence from, coaches growing up, things similar to that, coming back from adversity, you have to work hard to get what you want, to get that win, to get those points on the scoreboard. So I think that definitely influenced it, but I wouldn't say it's like, oh, my drive for sports and the consistent need to win is what took me there. I think it was more the support and parenting that I had from my parents to be, not everything's going to be handed to you. If you want something, you got to work hard for it. We're going to take care of the basics for you, but if you
Right.
want a phone, you're going to buy the phone, you're going to pay for the plan. You want a car,
Yeah.
you're going to buy the car, you're going to pay for the gas, the insurance. And so knowing that anything that I really wanted, I was going to have to work hard for, really put me, I think, in a better position to be successful, because it wasn't
Yeah.
as much of a cold shower when I moved away, because it was, okay, I've already kind of been doing these things. I've had this recognized responsibility already. And I think it was more just knowing that I had potential to do a little bit more than, working the warehouse job, staying at home, living with my parents, and having, like I said, that nudge from my friend saying I was going to fail. I'm thinking, I'm
Yeah.
not, that was what I needed to go out and do it and make sure that I had that, fire in the back of my mind to
Yeah.
continue to make ends meet, figure out what it was. I mean, there were times when I was dirt poor. I was selling my Apple Watch to make rent. I mean, doing whatever I can just to not fail down there and have to come crawling back home because I did.
Mhm. That's super powerful, and kind of just relating back to the most recent episode with Kevin Dubois, where we were kind of just diving into his background and how he really didn't have opportunities. So it was kind of just, almost balls to the wall almost, where he just had to take action every day. Whereas today, a lot of us, we have so many different opportunities. I kind of make the joke where people say we're going to get rich in real estate, crypto, NFTs, just because that's where the money's at. But reality is the money is wherever you take action. That's why today is such a good example with Mosquito Squad and pesticides and, pest control. If you take action, the systems are in place for you to make that money. It's just, I think we have a lack of action in society where people don't actually want to take that leap of faith, take that action. So I think that's really powerful. So kind of now we'll start to dive into franchising a bit. So you're in college, you kind of take the leap of faith. You're driving 5 hours away to go to school. You're majoring in marketing communication. So what's the path look like now as you're kind of starting to graduate college? Are you applying to a bunch of different jobs, or what does it look like for you at this point?
Yeah. So what brought me back home before I graduated was really the fact that I was starting to more seriously date my current wife, actually. And
Okay.
so I wanted to move home to be a little bit closer to her, continue to pursue that relationship, and obviously that's paid off for us. But so when I moved home, I didn't have anything lined up as far as a job, things similar to that. But aside from athletics, I've been very involved with outdoor sports. So skiing, volleyball, dirt biking, things similar to that. And so I knew that was something like, okay, if I can find a job in that industry, that'd be great. So I applied for a few different positions and landed an internship with a pretty large outdoor retail company that owns a few different brands, and was in a marketing role there for a while. And what ultimately got me back into not back into, but into franchising at first was that same friend who told me I was going to fail. He had recently started with one other person a outsourced franchise development company.
Mm,
And he had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you're home. I know you're in a marketing role right now. How would you feel about, coming and interviewing for the marketing position in our franchise development company?" And
mm,
I said, "I appreciate you reaching out. I have no idea what franchising is or the first thing about it." Right? He said,
yeah,
that's fine. Most people don't. Come in for an interview. Let's talk about it. We'll see if you're a good fit."
right.
And so, long story short, that's where I ended up. And being a small outsourced development company and in that marketing role, we were working with a lot of small to emerging brands. And this was in late 2018 that I started working there. And so things were going well. I was learning a lot through real life experience, kind of having real stakes of, if my marketing efforts don't pay off, this franchise is going to significantly suffer where
Mm,
their development is. And
yeah,
so it was a lot of small to emerging brands. And over the first year or so, we started getting into, having multiple brands we're working with. I think we were up to 12 to 15 at one point. But
mm,
when COVID came around,
yeah,
with them being small to emerging brands, it was very hard for them to continue to support the growth that we were trying to drive for them, support their franchisees financially, and pay the retainer to keep us doing development for them. And
huh,
so that COVID kind of ran us into the ground, and rightfully so. It took a toll on everyone. And that same friend landed at Authority Brands a month later in a sales role over Mosquito Squad, actually, and our sister company, America's Swimming Pool Company,
okay,
and didn't have any support person with him. And so he kind of pulled me along and said, "Hey, I know you're in a marketing role. You don't have a sales background, but I need some help over here. I think you should come apply and see if it's a fit." And
yeah,
so that's, long story short, where I ended up and how I got into franchising.
huh. That's super interesting. And a couple things for just the viewers there as they're trying to understand the world of franchising. You mentioned, emerging brand that you were working at and how they kind of went down during COVID. People probably have a general idea, they understand what emerging means, they know what a brand is, but can you give people what is the definition of an emerging brand versus a more well-established brand like Mosquito Squad where you are today?
Yeah, so I think the technical definition for a small to emerging brand is anything less than 100 units. And you
Mm,
can correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but it's usually less than 100, maybe around the 50 mark. But they haven't hit that real, scalability and growth to where they're starting to generate a lot of revenue from their franchisees through royalties. And so a lot of it is kind of bootstrapping things, trying to still figure out what systems and processes work. How can we, better support our franchisees, put them in a better position to be successful, and really iron out our business model. And then once that
yeah.
happens, you're able to build more recognition
Mhm.
nationally with the brand based on the number of locations you have, and really just have that credibility moving forward because you've had that trial and error period trying to figure things out.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think just the viewer is super beneficial. And as kind of a broker, one of the things I always tell people you need to just be aware of, emerging brand versus a more well-established brand and kind of that risk tolerance you're willing to take. And as you're you literally did marketing for an emerging brand. And that's literally one of the things I say you have to be aware of at an emerging brand. You're more likely to probably have to invest more money for marketing to find those customers because they are an emerging brand. People don't necessarily have that strong brand recognition. You're probably brand new to a market, trying to really kind of scale a new business and a new territory. So you're really trying to bring that word of mouth to that area. Whereas when you have that strong brand recognition of a Mosquito Squad, for example, you open that up in your territory, people see the Mosquito Squad drive by and they know what it is. Whereas you're not necessarily selling as much and you kind of just have the clients more coming to you. So I think that's just a really good point to kind of dive into. So you're at Authority Brands, is that correct? You brought into
Correct.
Authority Brands and then Mosquito Squad. So
Yep.
what were you doing specifically with Authority Brands, and can you dive us into what brought you specifically into Mosquito Squad from Authority Brands?
Yeah. So Mosquito Squad was acquired by Authority Brands in 2018. So in
Actually,
2020,
let me cut you off real quick for the viewers
yep,
who don't know what Authority Brands is. Can you just dive into what Authority Brands is and how that
yeah,
plays a role in Mosquito Squad? And actually, episode 2 was with Janice Fettuccino of Home Watch Caregivers, and that is part of Authority Brand. So hopefully you guys understand what it is now. But if you don't, Hayden's gonna help you guys out now.
yeah. So Authority Brands is a pretty massive home service industry franchise-based company. And so what they've been doing over the last, I would say 7 years, is acquiring different home service brands to bring into their portfolio to be the number one name in the household from property line to roof line is what we like to say. So anything that may go wrong in your home or that you may need service for, whether it's your air conditioner's gone out or you have mosquitoes in your backyard or your pool pump
Yeah.
went out, anything along those lines, you can call one of the Authority brands and we'll be able to take care of you. And so I think we have 15 different home service brands now, and really, again, looking to take over the home, making sure that we're the household name in home services.
That's awesome. And what is it about? So you're at Authority Brands for a couple of years, and at Authority Brands, are you looking at all the different brands, or how does that role work specifically? And then what brought you specifically to Mosquito Squad from there?
Yeah, good question. And so, like I mentioned, my friend who I'd worked with in the outsourced development company came to Authority Brands first, and he was actually in my position, the development manager
Huh.
for Mosquito Squad and America's Swimming Pool Company, but he didn't have a support person, handling the incoming leads coming in, making sure they're qualified, kind of doing some of the busy work, working with coaches and consultants such as yourself with territory checks, brand education. He was just overwhelmed, and so I
Yeah.
ended up being his support person for both brands. He eventually, over a few months up to a year, became VP of development for Authority Brands. So he was overseeing majority of our brands, and I was eventually promoted to being development manager of Mosquito Squad. And so that's kind of what my path looked like there. It wasn't so much, oh, I'm super passionate about mosquitoes or swimming pools,
Yeah.
I want a job here. It
Yeah.
was, I recognize my ability to create relationships, get people excited, talk to people in a casual setting, and get them comfortable with something that they may not already be, like franchising. And whatever brand it may be, I think I can find a fit there. And so it happened to be Mosquito Squad and ASP, and then a more
Yeah.
specific hands-on role with Mosquito Squad up to this point.
That's super powerful. And just kind of diving into the Authority Brands relationship a little bit more. Say a candidate was interested in one brand, would they be introduced to multiple brands, or is it kind of one brand specific, or how does that typical relationship work? If someone was kind of interested in home services, they like the idea of kind of having a parent company, what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. One I actually get a lot from coaches and consultants is, okay, if this isn't available, say the territory sold out for Mosquito Squad, what
Yeah.
other options are there in the Authority Brands family? Because when it comes to home services, all the business models we offer are fairly similar in the sense that
Okay.
they're operated man in a truck and they're very scalable from day one. And so whether or not it's a market fit for any specific brand, or maybe they're just a very well capitalized client looking to
Yeah.
increase their portfolio pretty rapidly, we'll definitely look at, oh, you know what? In Phoenix, there's a ton of mosquitoes and swimming pools.
Right.
ASP, American Swimming Pool Company, may be a good fit as well. Or, maybe in northern Utah, there's, a lot of trees and mosquitoes, Monster Tree Service and Mosquito Squad could be a good fit. And so we
Huh.
definitely utilize that, the cross branding on both the development and the consumer side, because again, being the number one household name for any home service you may need, but also being able to pivot and say, okay, if Mosquito Squad's not a good fit because of X reason, maybe
Yeah.
this other brand could be. And so
Huh.
we're constantly doing that, but also making sure that we're not putting that client in a position to where they're going to be biting off more than they can chew. Because as
Right.
much as Authority Brands would love to have, a new franchisee for 3 different brands at once, that franchisee is going to be extremely overwhelmed should they try to do that without the financial and um, work capacity to be able to manage all three: launch, scale, and want to make sure they're in a good position to be successful from the get-go and not biting off more than they can chew.
That's super interesting, and kind of diving a little bit more into that relationship. So say someone did make the decision, they're with Mosquito Squad, they're with America's Swimming Pool, they're with Home Watch Caregivers. Do those brands do the franchise owners kind of intercommunicate a little bit in terms of if someone was using marketing for Mosquito Squad, would you kind of be like, oh, you guys have a pool, here's an ASP swimming pool, for example, or how does that relationship work?
Yep, absolutely. And so, actually, coming up for the viewers, if you're not aware of when this was recorded, today is October 19th. The Authority Brands annual convention is first week of November, where all of our brand franchise or all of our brands franchise owners come together. They're in one place. They have the ability to network with each other, find out what other franchise owners from different brands are in their location. Because, like I mentioned before, it's as simple as the pool cleaner being out there and getting eaten alive by mosquitoes in the customer's
Yeah,
backyard and leaving just a little flyer from Mosquito Squad saying, hey, we just treated your yard. I was kind of getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. I can only imagine it's hard for you to enjoy your pool. Feel free to give them a call, if you're experiencing the same problem or whatever it may be. I'm obviously not in the marketing role anymore to create that
yeah.
copy. But, yeah, it's very easy for our franchise owners, the technicians, when they're back there, or hey, I was working on your tree, working on getting this fungus removed. There are a ton of mosquitoes in those types of foliage and trees, bushes,
Yeah.
plants, whatever it may be. We can have Mosquito Squad come out next time and have you taken care of on that front.
Yeah,
And it works very well for all different brands, right? Stepped in your dog's waste when I was out there treating your backyard for Mosquito Squad. Do you want duty calls to come out and take care of it every single week? There's so many different pivot points on the
yeah,
consumer for franchisees to benefit from one another.
yeah, that's super powerful for someone when you're kind of considering a brand having that parent company that literally specializes in home service brands. So when you think about looking at that brand recognition, looking at that track record, how long they've been there, you want them to have that well-established track record where we're kind of going back into the emerging brands where you have more validation, you can talk to more franchise owners. And one of the biggest concerns that I always hear is the marketing, where am I going to find my customers, lead generation, and you can continually validate this. And we'll kind of dive into the real estate selection and how you kind of help with the demographics. But it's just so powerful that you have those systems in place that really allow them to literally thrive. So we're kind of into the podcast now. Can we kind of just dive into overall, literally, what is Mosquito Squad? So people have a general understanding. We kill mosquitoes, but what is Mosquito Squad, and kind of what is the general opportunity? Then we can kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to dive into that. Mosquito Squad is obviously a outdoor mosquito control company. We were founded in 2005, actually the very first mosquito control company in the US. And we realized that there was this huge untapped market to where there were outdoor pest control companies, right? But no one was treating specifically for mosquitoes or knew how. And that was around the same time that there was a lot of awareness around West Nile virus, malaria, all these vector-borne diseases that mosquitoes are transporting. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it's I'm gonna have to read this quote because I wrote it down. Where is it? Um, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Basically, mosquitoes are the deadliest animal, as quoted by the CDC, and there's over 700,000 deaths worldwide from mosquito-transmitted illnesses. And so it's not just this bite on my arm that I can't stop scratching. There's real life health issues that come with it, and we want to pioneer this industry and take care of it. And so we invented the barrier control treatment program. So we're not just walking on the back porch and essentially spraying a big can off on the back porch. We've done the research, had the time to, like I said, go through the emerging brand phase to try, fail, see what works, and study where the mosquitoes are really nesting, breeding, laying eggs, to lay that barrier control treatment around the property and keep those customers mosquito free and offer them a guaranteed. And so it's a recurring revenue model, treated every 3 weeks. Customers are billed at the time of a treatment. They know that we're showing up. They receive the text, hey, Josh, Hayden's coming to treat your property today. Should be there between this time and this time. Please make sure that the back gate's unlocked and all pets are inside the house during that time. We look forward to treating you soon. I show up, spray the property, make sure everything's good. lock the gate on my way out, click job complete on my phone. You're automatically invoiced. Hey, Josh, thanks so much for allowing us to treat your property today. Hayden just finished up. Please allow the product to dry for 10 to 15 minutes before returning outside.
Mhm.
And so very automated, streamlined, simple,
Yeah.
and essential.
I love it. It's always kind of one of the big things is what does the technology look like with the company and how is it really adapting to times and really just how is it making life easier for that franchise owner and kind of just can someone else replicate these services and how replicable is that service? So when you have it in your technology, in your phone, you can literally manage it through an app on your phone. It just makes things that much easier. So I think that's very powerful. And really just kind of goes to show a little bit of the differentiation. And really another thing that you said that's really interesting is the 21-day recurring revenue, because everyone's all about trying to figure out the MRR, the monthly recurring revenue, and really just trying to get that number as high as possible so that they can focus on other passions, other interests. So it's nice when you have that recurring revenue built in and you're really providing that service. You dived into the numbers and how you're really helping other people. And I remember back in, what was it, 5-10 years ago, people talking about malaria, like the world was going to end. And with lice, all this, it's no one really knows what's going to happen. And even just when you're at the pool just trying to relax, it literally I hate to say it, but it really is a buzzkill. It really ends the night and there's really nothing you can do. So having that cross marketing that you spoke about, having that recurring revenue, it really is a powerful service. So I think one of the things that people would think about, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit, nowadays people are talking about environmentally friendly, green friendly. Can you talk about what is kind of the chemicals that you use? Is it kind of bad for the environment, or how does that general outlook look?
Yeah, that's a great question, and definitely one that I get a lot from consultants and clients that I'm working with is, okay, well, what is this doing to the environment? It can't be good. And the reality is everyone's using pretty similar pesticides, right? Regardless of who you're acquiring it from. But if it wasn't safe to use, we'd have a lot bigger problems on our hands, right? And so that's why we send that reminder, just, hey, allow the product to dry for 10 to 15 minutes, because at that point on adhesion to whatever surface, it's 100% safe. And so as long as you're not spraying someone directly in the face with the wet product, you shouldn't see any negative effects. But we definitely do our best to make sure that, okay, we're not going to spray the koi pond because there's fish in there. We don't want to have a negative effect, or the bird bath, or we also don't treat when it's raining, because if the product isn't able to dry, it's going to get washed off into the storm drain, and there could be negative effects if that does happen. And so we're very, very conscious of that. And then we're also rolling out early next year a new proprietary all natural product that we'll be able to offer to our customers as well. And obviously, like you said, people are very environmentally conscious, which is great. We want to support that and do whatever we can to help keep mosquitoes out of their yard so they can enjoy it, but also make sure that we're not doing anything that could potentially harm the environment, and do what we can to go green as well.
That's super powerful. And I love everyone dropping breaking news on the Conquer the Mind podcast. So that's super exciting. And, just another thing that people should be evaluating when they're looking for the right franchise is the technology we mentioned a few moments ago, but how is a company adapting in really all directions? So every person likes to have more products, more services, more ways to provide value to their customers. So we talked about with Home Watch caregivers, how they were adding a medical service in 2024, and Mosquito Squad is adding a whole new service in 2024. So the Authority brands in general just has a lot going on right now. They're adding a whole lot. So it's really exciting to see, just from my perspective, and as a franchise owner, being able to add all these new services. It's super powerful and just something to look forward to. And I know you kind of mentioned with the environmentally friendly, really the only thing that could go wrong is someone literally getting sprayed in the face with the chemicals. Just thinking about that as a joke, I'm sure you don't have employees that do that, but how does the screening process work for employees? How do you find employees? What does it look like trying to recruit, retain talent? That's always one of the big things that I hear getting on the phone with people. They want to start a business, they want to start making that money, but who's going to make that money for me?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that Mosquito Squad has actually been able to implement since being acquired by Authority Brands a few years ago is the franchisor itself will be consistently generating a list of applications nationwide for a technician for those people to go out and treat people's property. And the beauty about it, and as bad or as rude as it may seem to say, it's unskilled labor, right? As long as that prospective employee can legally drive a vehicle and put 25 pounds on their back and have a clean background check, they're a quote unquote eligible employee for Mosquito Squad. And so the screening process will be handled by the franchisee to make sure, okay, great. Not only can you drive a car, but culturally you're a good fit. You're a good technician who I think could, not just spray people's backyards for the next 2 years, but have real potential in moving up in the company, becoming a sales manager, an office manager, whatever it may be, and
Yeah.
identifying the potential in these technicians and really helping them grow to get to where they want to be at, whether it's with Mosquito Squad specifically or just another aspect of their life that they're trying to better themselves in. Our franchisees are very good at that, and it's something that we really try to emphasize and support is employee growth from the ground up.
Yeah, that's just one of the things I love so much about the world of franchising, just how aligned everyone is. You really don't see that in other industries, and you kind of think, oh, other franchise owners, they're kind of competing, but everyone has designated territories. And then you think, oh, my income is going to be limited, but you get to validate how much you can make in that territory. You see how realistic it is. And no one's asking you to buy a business on day one. You're going to be able to validate that opportunity, see what the financials are, but you're able to speak with other franchise owners here about what challenges they went through, how realistic it is, how long it took them to actually get that ROI, that cash flow, what it's like hiring employees, retaining that talent. So all those hard questions you really get answered, and they're all really in favor because brand recognition is really number one in franchising and following those systems. So the stronger a brand is in one location, the better off everyone does in total. And it's just interesting how the growth opportunities in franchising really is there. So if you want to start with a single unit, you can do that with one location, or you can really scale it to multiple territories. So, if you're a franchise owner, your growth limits are literally only limited in terms of how much you want to scale it, how much you want to put into it. And then same thing with, hiring employees. Everyone's very open about kind of your goals with the industry. So for example, you're talking about hiring employees. So many times a franchise owner, they've put in their 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years sometimes. They're ready to retire. They're ready to go live on the beach. They want to sell their business. They often sell it to someone inside the business, oftentimes a general manager, someone that's been with them for 5, 10 years. So if you're an employee in franchising, if you're a franchise owner, everyone's just so in alignment, and it's just so rare to see in an industry. So I just think it's funny how the joke is always you fall into franchising, but the
Yep.
opportunities are really just there for everyone. And it kind of just goes back to this idea of just trying new things, taking action. And I just think it's really powerful and something I wanted to really bring up as you kind of brought that to my attention. But kind of diving back into Mosquito Squad, and we've kind of dived into the Authority Brands relationship. But one of the things I always tell people when they're evaluating a franchise is looking at like that corporate leadership. So can you tell me what the corporate leadership of Mosquito Squad specifically looks like? And does that differ from the leadership of Authority Brands, or what's kind of the relationship of the guy, the CEO of Mosquito Squad? How involved is he versus the CEO of Authority Brands, or what does that relationship look like?
Yeah. So to be completely honest with you, a lot of that, as you get higher and higher with how large of a corporation Authority Brands is, a lot of those relationships are much higher than where I'm at on the totem pole, to be transparent. But one thing I can say is we recognize, especially with Authority Brands behind us, we are a very large, not just franchising organization as a whole with Authority Brands and all of our sister brands, but Mosquito Squad specifically. We're at the point where we're about 250 locations, over 100 franchisees. It's very hard for our brand president to oversee each individual location and make sure they're all taken care of, right? So one thing that we've been able to do to not spread our brand president too thin is implement the use of business advisors. So every single franchisee will be appointed a business advisor to help support them, not just through their first 2 years getting onboarded, launched, ramped up, scaling, but the entirety of their franchise agreement. So they have that mentor figure to, go to someone who has experience and say, hey, this isn't working for me. What do I need to do? Or having the business advisors kind of take a look at the books or what they're doing with, an in-person visit to say, this is what you're doing that's great. This is where I think we could see some improvements. Let's try this, and making sure that there's a very good relationship there to have all of our franchisees taken care of, rather than saying, great, there's another dot on the map. Hopefully they can go make it work. We're very, very passionate about putting our franchisees in a position to be successful from day one and supporting them in the way we can to helping them reach their goals with the business.
Yeah, I think your point earlier with how Mosquito Squad is adding new products and services in 2024, it shows the CEO is definitely very hands-on, involved with the growth of the company and really looking for the franchise owner's best interest. And one thing that kind of brought to my attention as I kind of bring this up, you go through the validation process when you're potentially interested in a franchise. And that's when you literally, one thing that people don't understand is you're going to literally get the phone number, the email address of every franchise owner in the system, so that you can will really validate that opportunity, see what the day in the life looks like. And there's a big kind of misconception or stereotype in the industry, or, this idea of people discount themselves out before really evaluating the opportunity. People think that they might not be able to fully evaluate the opportunity, or they might only get the top 10 franchise owners in the system, for example, but that's really not the case. You get every single franchise owner, whether they're doing successful, not successful, are other franchise owners selling in the system, the cost of goods, the earnings, everything. You're going to get all these questions answered. So I just think it's really important, if you are someone interested in taking those next steps, it really is an education process in franchising with these really unlimited growth opportunities. And we'll kind of dive into how there are so many different models, but I just wanted to kind of bring that up real quick. And I think it's very interesting as we kind of talk about Mosquito Squads, authority brands, and there's just so much growth happening clearly. So one of the things I think a lot of people would kind of think about with the Mosquito franchise is potentially, especially in certain locations, just the seasonality of the business. So can you help people understand, are there certain locations that do better than others? What does kind of the season look like? Is it different if, you're in Boston versus South Florida, where I am, for example? How does the seasons work? And, can you still be profitable if you're only open, 6 months during the year? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Aside from product safety, probably the number one hesitancy I get from clients is, well, how am I generating revenue in the off season? Because I live, me specifically, I live in northern Utah. The mosquito season's 5, maybe 6 months. We don't have mosquitoes half of the year. How am I going to be profitable? And so that's where it goes back to, what I mentioned earlier, us putting our franchisees in the best position possible to be successful. If we don't think that you can be successful in any given market, we're not going to move forward with the territory there. But luckily enough with Mosquito Squad, whether you're seasonal or not, I mean, for example, our franchisee in Salt Lake City, near where I'm located, 5 to 6 month season, he's one of our top franchise owners, doing more revenue than, majority of our system in a seasonal market. So whether you're in, upstate New York, where your season's very short, or Southern Florida, Southern California, Phoenix, Arizona, regardless of what the seasonality looks like, there is so much potential, because if I can only enjoy my backyard for 5 months of the year, I'm going to pay whatever I need to be able to do so. Right. And so the market's definitely there. And going back to your point about validation, majority of our Mosquito Squad franchise owners live in a seasonal market, whether it's 5 to 9 months. That validates extremely well. And you can definitely see the light bulb click with the client or the prospective franchisee of, oh, the seasonality is something I can really look forward to take a few months off at the end of the year, rather than something that's a strain on my business. Because obviously if it wasn't working, we wouldn't be where we are 18 years later.
Yeah. That's crazy that you said, I just got to repeat that your most profitable franchise owner is someone that's really only open 5, 6 months of the year. That's crazy. And, people will still think of reasons to discount the opportunity, discount themselves out, but really just the education process is so powerful. So if someone is in one of those states, or first, are there any locations that are open 12 months a year? Like down where I am in South Florida, is that something that is a 12-month business? Are there certain locations that are open longer? And what does kind of the off season look like for someone that is in that shorter time period?
Yeah, so there's definitely areas that operate year round. Really depends on not only just your exact location, but what did the climate look like that year, right? We had a very big wet winter last year in Utah. Our mosquito season was absolutely terrible because we had so much snow and runoff coming off the mountains that it was wet everywhere. And so that made for a longer season just in and of itself in a more seasonal area like northern Utah. But really, whatever the seasonality is, when you get to the end of your season, whether you experience it or not, it's a lot of just regrouping what technicians am I going to keep for next year? What adjustments do I need to make in this off season while I have some time to really dig in, evaluate with my business advisor on where I succeeded, where I maybe struggled, and get things better prepared for the following season.
That's super powerful. And one of the things we kind of spoke about earlier is just kind of that monthly recurring revenue. And I think something that potential franchise owner would kind of think about is with the seasonality, their business is open 6 months a year, then closed for 6 months, then opened again. Is it kind of like every time they have to open for the season, they're like starting from scratch with they're trying to fight for new customers all over again? Or talk about from year 1 to year 2 to year 4, what's like the client retention like from one year to the next year? Are they retaining those clients, or are they kind of every year is like a whole new business, kind of like go, go, go?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I mean, it's very similar. I'll compare it to Netflix. Mosquito Squad showing up every 3 weeks. I no longer have mosquitoes in my backyard. That's all I care about. I don't look at the monthly invoice or whatever coming in, but it auto renews the following year. So our customer retention rate year over year is in our FTD, it's about 70%. So our
Wow.
franchisees being able to, perform that high quality service, there's no doubt. I mean, for me personally, being a customer, I used to have to mow my yard in the middle of the summer with a long sleeve shirt and pants on because I was getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. Now, since I've had Mosquito Squad come out and treat my yard, I don't have to think about it, and there's no way I'm ever going back because of the nuisance it was to just go outside for 10, 15 minutes, maybe have a fire with my wife in our backyard and just being eaten alive by mosquitoes, and you can't enjoy it. And so the retention rate's extremely high. Obviously, some people will, realize at the end of the year, okay, maybe I'm not going to try it for the first few months and see if I really have a mosquito problem that's that bad. Odds are they're coming back 1 to 2 months into the season because it is. Right? They need that mosquito control service, and so our retention rate is extremely high. Definitely not going out and trying to generate a whole new customer base year over year.
Yeah, that would definitely come back to bite. I hate to do it again.
Absolutely. I
But
love
70%, that's really impressive. And when you think of kind of the 21-day cycle that you mentioned earlier, just the recurring revenue is really what everyone's looking for, and the idea of kind of just building up that valuable business. So kind of diving into the selection of someone's interested, they're in a certain location. What does it look like? What do you guys do to help them pick out a certain territory with real estate selection? How do you figure out how profitable that location would be? If the mosquitoes are going to be there in 3-4 years, how many months of a year they're going to be open? How do you kind of help them kind of get a more realistic picture of what that could potentially look like?
Yeah, good question. And so that's one area where our experience and tenureship in the industry really pays off for us, because odds are wherever this prospective franchisee is looking to open up, there's someone else in the region who we can get a lot of info from of, okay, there's someone 50 miles north of you experiences a very similar season. The demographics are comparable in these ways. This could be a good franchisee for you to talk to really validate what your market could look like. But obviously, we're doing a lot on our end to make sure that we see not only enough people or households in a territory, but also, what's the proximity look like to water, to water? What do their rainy seasons look like? How long do they last? And making sure that there's mosquito problem in the area, which is very rare that I talk to someone who says, well, I don't have mosquitoes in my area.
Yeah,
And if that's the case, it's okay. Mosquito Squad may not be a good fit, right? But then also making
yeah,
sure that there's enough people in the territory who can afford the service. So we have a very close eye on household income levels to make sure that they're not purchasing a territory that really doesn't have any potential because the household income is so low. And that's
uh,
somewhere where we've really tried to differentiate ourselves from other mosquito control companies, as our territory sizes are now about 3 to 4 times larger than most
yeah,
competitors, to make sure that we don't have so many neighboring franchisees butting heads in Houston. They have a very large territory to kind of grow responsibly rather than rapidly, is what we're looking at, rather than fighting off 3 or 4 territories for the same amount of population or whatever, and having the fees associated with it. So having a much larger territory with the criteria being met to be successful and compared or in comparison to the other 230 plus locations we have is something that really
mm,
works to our advantage and our prospective franchisees' advantage, because we have
yeah.
the knowledge, tools, and resources to identify really strong markets.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and just continues to go back to the idea of validating the idea. And no one's ever asked you to buy a business on day one or even day 30. It really is a 6 month really education process, which is really going to dive me into the next process of trying to figure out really Mosquito Squad's ideal candidate. And really what's super important with franchising is that it kind of goes back to franchising is just so unique with everyone really in alignment, where no one's looking to just sell a franchise, because the very worst thing that any franchise can do is really award territory to someone that doesn't want to grow a business. They just want to kind of sit at home, think the business is just going to grow. There are people that are looking to scale a business in certain territories. They're looking for people that are ready to purchase a business in 2 to 3 months, people that are really ready to take control of their future, which everyone kind of says, but are you actually ready to take those next steps, take control? Really, when people, as we kind of tied back into earlier, when people are say you can't do things, people are say you're going to fail, are you willing to really take that leap of faith? And what's so fortunate with franchising is that we have a step-by-step process. Really, when you work with me, we'll literally educate you every single step, where no one's asking you to buy the business. We'll walk you through each step. If you're comfortable with each step, we'll continue to the next step. But really, the goal is that you're confident in making that decision on your future. And I always say, people might figure out franchising is not for them. People might figure out, oh, I want to actually start a business for myself. And I applaud those people. I applaud anyone that's an entrepreneur, anyone that wants to take that leap of faith. But really, I applaud anyone that even just takes that call to me, because it takes just something to take that action, take that leap of faith. And really, my goal is just to educate you on the process, see what franchises look like, because I don't sell franchises by any means. I just qualify people. Then I really partner on your behalf to identify those top opportunities. So as we're diving into the ideal candidate, what you guys are looking for, you guys get hundreds of leads every week. Your phone's ringing, trying to be the next Mosquito Squad franchise owner. What does the ideal candidate look like when you've looked at Mosquito Squad owners? You said some guy opened 5, 6 months and he's the most successful. When you look at those top 10, 15, 20 franchise owners, what's their background look like? What do those traits look like? And then what does kind of their day in the life look like at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. You kind of hit it right on the head as you kind of went through it. And it goes back to what I mentioned about, on just the consumer side, responsible growth rather than rapid growth, biting off more than you can chew. We're
Yeah,
not looking to put as many dots as possible on the map. We're looking to identify really strong potential franchisees to come into our system and build a successful business with a large territory in any given market. And so there's obviously a lot of different characteristics that come along with it. Your typical high net worth individual who's burnt out in corporate America, looking to do something for themselves, right? And knows that they have the ability to be successful, but don't know how to build a business, or what the first step is, what the options are for business ownership. Because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs, at least the mindset I had, was I need to invent some brand new product or service to go out and be successful and and get recognition, I didn't realize that I could purchase a proven business model in my area and utilize just the work ethic, ambition that I have to take a lot of risk off the table and say, okay, I'm willing to go work hard. Tell me how or what steps I need to take to build the business, launch, and what do I need to know, which I think is really what comes down to our from what I've seen over the last 18 months or so, ideal candidate. A lot of times it's someone who's actually been in a blue collar position for the last 20 or 30 years and they're just burnt out, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
corporate or working in the oil industry, they whether it's themselves or their body can't take it anymore, they're ready to do something else and use the work ethic that they have to build something for themselves, whether or not they have the skills to go out and start a business on their own. Probably
Right.
not, right? That's a very unique skill set that takes a lot of time and effort to perfect.
Right.
Mosquito Squad takes so much of that risk off the table to say, okay, do you meet these qualifications? Tell me about yourself. What does your background look like? Let's see if you're a good fit for Mosquito Squad. And we think that you can, work hard to build a successful business because we'll support you every step of the way.
Right. You said some powerful things there, and the idea of reinventing the wheel is just so powerful and really relates back to the beginning idea of taking action and how people think of real estate, crypto, NFTs, XYZ, and all these different ways to get rich. But if you really just take that action, you take those steps, it really, people try to overcomplicate it. They say, when I get out of college, I'll start a business. When this happens, I'll start a business. But there really is no better the day to start than today. Especially if you actually do plan on being a business owner. That's not something where you snap your fingers and you have all the skills to be a business owner. There's marketing, there's sales. You got to have a good product, first of all. Then you got to find the customers. And then you got to realize every single day someone is competing to take that away from you. Whether it's someone in your area, but most likely it's someone you can't even see that's competing. And all these people, they already have the resources in marketing, in sales, employees, retention. They already are the best in each industry. Then you add on, authority brands, giving that extra layer of support to all these things. It really is just a matter of, do you want to be successful? And I think really what it comes down to with whether you're in corporate America, really especially corporate America, or even just kind of a young entrepreneur, really the goal is you want to be able to provide for the people around you. You want to be able to provide for your family. And, nowadays crazy things are happening left and right. And it doesn't matter if it's today, next week, 10 years from now, there's always going to be crazy things happening. There's always going to be an excuse not to really take action. But it really is just, there's really two types of people, I always say. And, I hate to put people in boxes. It's really like the worst thing you can do. But really just the idea of, are you on this path of growth? Are you trying to get better every day? Or are you on the path of stability? And there's no right or wrong reason on either way, but just, are you looking to improve? Are you looking to get better? And I think franchising is just so powerful because if you are someone that does want to improve, you do want to provide for your family, or maybe you just want to diversify. There are just these different participations and models for everyone. So I just think that's super powerful in terms of, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's just, do you want to be successful? Do you want to provide for your family? In terms of, I always say there's always kind of three things when it comes down to it. Really the financial freedom, everyone wants to do XYZ, but if you don't have the finances, it just gives you that sense of comfort. And really number two is just that lifestyle freedom. Everyone wants to kind of live on the beach, sipping a margarita or, drinking mimosas in the morning, whatever it may be. Or they just have other passions or interests. Maybe they design rockets. I learned in the last episode, people just have different interests. They want to live a certain lifestyle, but they don't want to be working a 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday at hours when they're told. Maybe they get texted even later than that or earlier than that or on the weekends. And then thirdly, and I think this is most people, is really just having that genuine impact on other people. I think it's just so important. And, Mosquito Squad, we talked about earlier, you could have a pool party, but if there's mosquitoes, it really is a buzzkill. It really does kill the party. So just that impact, the financial freedom, the lifestyle freedom, I think it's really powerful. And I know our time is really wrapping up here, but as we kind of talked about the ideal candidate, say they are interested in Mosquito Squad, what does the process look like to get operations running? How long would it take them to get that first customer? What does it look like to kind of ramp up the business as we kind of wind up the hour here?
Yeah. So really, right now at this point of the year, depending on what market you're in and where you're located, this is a really good time to start the process with Mosquito Squad to find out if it's a good fit, because you've got the entire next season ahead of you. So going through the discovery process, you mentioned the quality decision making process. Um, is what I'm doing right now in my job going to get me to where I want to be in 5 years? Yes
Yeah.
or no? Why not? And helping him get to the realization that there is other opportunity out there to utilize the tools, resources you have, and skill set to be successful on your own. But as far as getting up and running, say it takes them 6 weeks to 8 weeks to make a decision. Okay, sign my agreement, I'm ready to go. They're immediately going to be contacted by their onboarding business advisors to kind of hold their hand through the entire onboarding checklist, make sure that you're getting registered for our online training, which is about a 3-week process. Work at your own pace, make sure that you're very comfortable with not only Mosquito Squad, who we are and what we do, but what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. You're going to be a pest control expert by the time you finish our online training, and making sure that you're getting everything you need to get your business up and running. And that will typically take, I would say, start to finish onboarding, depending on what time of year it is, because we don't want someone to launch in December or January when they're in their off season. There's no mosquitoes, right? So we have a big focus on starting the marketing efforts a month or two before mosquito season hits, so they can see, or the prospective customers can see, oh, there's Mosquito Squad in my location now. I can sign up now, make sure they come out and take care of it when mosquitoes are here. So the timeline to opening really varies so much, because we want to make sure they're opening at the most ideal time of the year, and starting marketing efforts beforehand, and making sure that they have plenty of time to get everything they need to get up and running and tackle all of those incoming calls that we're generating for them as soon as that phone starts ringing.
That's really powerful that you said that. And it's kind of a good way as we're kind of wrapping up with, candidates, they're so concerned with, I don't want to get on the phone with them. I feel like they're going to try to sell me on XYZ, but you guys are looking out for their best interest, because really the number one thing that really most people care about is, when am I going to see that money come back? What month is that going to look like? When's that cash flow going to look like? And first off, as we talked about, you're going to validate that. You're going to talk to all the other franchise owners in the system and literally see how long it took to get where you want to be. We'll see if you're comfortable with that. But like we said, no franchise is looking to simply sell franchises, or if they are, it's not one that I'm representing personally. These are franchises that receive hundreds of leads every week. If they wanted to sell franchises, they wouldn't have to, do any of this. They literally are looking to find the best fits so that it can align with their culture, with the growth of the business. So that really, it is interesting that you guys aren't looking to just sell someone a franchise if they had to wait another 5 years in the off season to ramp up the business, because you guys are going to allow them to ramp up the business a lot faster than that when it is time to go. So I just think that's very interesting. And my final question, as we kind of wrap up the hour, you're on the phone with people a lot, kind of going through, they're going through the process. They're trying to understand the opportunity more and more. And we talk about people in corporate America, maybe younger entrepreneurs trying to take that risk. But what are some of like the biggest concerns that you hear from people on the phone? Some of the biggest hesitations of, I don't know if this is for me, kind of weighing out, the financials, XYZ. What are the biggest hesitations, concerns you hear? And what would you tell them in terms of, if you take that leap of faith, what will your life's going to look like this in 3 to 5 years? What would you tell that person?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's so many different objections that come up and concerns that individual people have. But I'd say the biggest one, everything comes back to the risk and the sense of insecurity that they have moving forward, because they don't know how to run a business. They don't know if they can quit their job and take that financial burden on of starting a business and putting in the work to make that business successful. Because obviously, regardless of how long we've been in business, how proven our systems, processes, business models are, that franchisee is not willing to work and grow that business, they're not going to succeed. And so going back to exactly what you said, making sure that prospective franchisee isn't feeling like they're being sold because they're being educated, right? It's a two-way street. I'm evaluating the prospective franchisee. They're evaluating us to see if we're a good fit and helping them realize that, whether you purchase a location or not, doesn't matter to me. I want to make sure that where you end up moving forward is the right fit. So like I mentioned, that quality decision-making process is, okay, if you stay in your job right now, are you securing it for the next 5 years? Is that going to help you get to where you want to be and help you get over, the underlying reason of why you came to me in the first place? Something in your life is not meeting the expectations. Let me help you figure out what that is, and making sure that they're very comfortable every step of the discovery process. And okay, Hayden and Mosquito Squad are taking care of me. I feel comfortable. I have a solid relationship. No one's pushing me in any which way. They're looking to take care of me. And whether or not I make a decision, should I, move forward, I know I'm going to be supported, and they've got the process ahead of me laid out. So all I have to do is work hard to go out and be successful.
Yeah, it's just so powerful, and just a lot of themes with just taking action, the systems being in place, not trying to reinvent the wheel. And no one's trying to sell you a franchise. If you're satisfied in your day-to-day life, although I would argue there are a lot of good ways to still diversify in franchising. So I would argue there probably still a way, but if you are someone, you're not satisfied in your life, you're looking for something extra, or like we said, you are even satisfied, you're making 6 figures a month, you have money coming in, you're already living that life. There's nothing better to invest your money into a good or service that actually provides value to other people. So rather than, investing in the stock market where you have no idea where your money's going, literally investing into something like real estate where you can actually touch and feel that asset. Franchising is an asset you can touch, you feel, you build up a valuable business, and eventually you can sell that business for a lot of money one day, and you have the systems in place so that you're not reinventing the wheel. A good example a couple of years ago in terms like COVID, good example, you were at the emerging brand, they went down under during that time, whereas a Mosquito Squad, a well-established brand, you guys just get 10x stronger. And it's just such a good example as someone, weighing those different options, different things to consider. So, I know we went well above the hour. Actually, we actually started a little bit early today. And Hayden, this was your very first podcast, so I appreciate you being on. How do you feel after podcast number 1? You feel like you'd do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did a fantastic job of, laying everything out, making a conversation rather than just, spewing information from both sides. And, I think it was extremely beneficial for me. Hopefully it was for you as well. And any of the viewers, hopefully there's something that they can take away from it, whether it's, related to Mosquito Squad or not, just being able to identify opportunity and jump on it, and the benefits of franchising. So again, I know we're over as well, but I really appreciate your time, and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, well, if you guys made it to the end of the podcast, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Definitely subscribe, like, comment, help out the algorithm. Episode 4 of the Conquer the Mind podcast. Hayden, I appreciate your time. Everyone, have a great day.
All right, thanks.